For we know that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. And if a house is divided against itself, that house will not be able to stand. We're going to start somewhere in this sermon, and I promise you we're going to get back to this little light of mine. I promise you that. But we have a journey to go on before we get there. Just this past Friday, I had the honor of burying a friend. He was 37 years old, and he died of an unintentional drug overdose about 2 weeks ago. So this past Friday, we said prayers for him, and we commended his life and his soul to God. And then over this past week, we have seen a couple of very high-profile celebrity suicides. Started with Kate Spade early in the week, and then over close to the weekend, Anthony Bourdain. It was heartbreaking to see these people who, from the outside and we look at, seem to have all kinds of things going for them. Money, fame. They have people that they see, and yet something inside of them was divided. Something inside of their own house was not together for them. I know this feeling. I know this feeling well because throughout my life, I have suffered with both depression and anxiety. And I have sat in places. In fact, when I was 14 years old, I sat in my parents' bedroom with a loaded gun on my lap, deciding whether or not the world would be a better place without me in it, whether I would be able to escape from how I felt about myself. Something stopped me. I can't say exactly what it was. But throughout my life, I have lived with and struggled with both depression and anxiety. And so this last Christmas Day, I gave myself a gift. It's probably a gift I should have given myself a long time ago, but because of how we live in this country and the shame around asking for help and the stigma around mental illness and depression, I never had before. But on Christmas Day last year, I started taking an antidepressant for the very first time in my life after 46 years. And it changed a lot for me. Amazingly, somehow I began to understand that mental illness is actually illness. And it's not something we can just think ourselves out of. I see a therapist regularly, and I pay attention to these things. It's been something, though, that from the time I was a little kid, I dealt with. My house, the place I lived, this tent, this earthly body, I've struggled with. When I was a little kid, probably 6 years old, I had this anxiety about every night I would pray, and I would pray the Lord's Prayer, and then I had a list of all the people in my family that I had to pray for because I had convinced myself if they did not hear, if God did not hear their name from my lips, they would not wake up in the morning. And so on and on and on we go. We don't talk about the things that matter. And we don't ask for help when we need it. Everybody in this room has either suffered from or knows someone who suffers from mental illness, depression, anxiety, any other, name the list of things. And yet, how many of us talk about it with one another? Almost no one does. For me to stand up here in front of you and share this with you as part of this sermon is my attempt to help make my experience something that can change your experience. And you can take your experience and help it change someone else's experience. The statistics are staggering in our country. 45,000 people commit suicide every year. That's 5 an hour. That means that from the time we have been here, 10 people in this country have committed suicide. LGBTQ teens have the highest percentage of suicide. The highest number of suicides in our country right now are white men between 50 and 60. And yet, there is a deafening silence, not only in our culture, but in our churches. You see, as people of faith, we have something to say. We have the ability to speak out and to speak in a way that people might hear us differently. To tell someone just to suck it up, or things are going to get better, don't worry about it. These are all the things that I've been told in my life. Just get happy. Go do something that makes you happy. That'll make it all better. No, actually, when I don't want to go do something that makes me happy, it makes me feel worse. Because then I'm a failure at making myself happy. Right? You just completely failed at making yourself happy. You can't even make yourself happy right. And so the cycle continues. But what people of faith have is we have something outside of us that we can point to as an everlasting place of love. An everlasting hope that comes to us and doesn't have to be developed from inside of us. That is the way the community of the Holy Spirit works. And that is what it means to not be divided in yourself. Because, my friends, Jesus Christ never asked us to be silent about things that matter. Jesus Christ wants every single one of us to be whole in who we are. Wants to heal us in the places that we need to be healed. And in talking about things, and sharing with one another the things that matter to us, that is the work that Jesus is doing through us. So we come together in an isolated and more isolated world. We come here on Sunday mornings and we're together as a community. But I was just reading an article this morning, and you all know this experience. If you don't know it yourself, again, you know someone who has it. People who get up in the morning, eat breakfast, go to work, and interact with a machine all day long, and then get something for dinner on the way home, and then go and interact with another machine until they go to bed, go to sleep, and start the next day again the same way. We're isolated one from another in ways that we never have been before, and community seems to matter less and less. And those communities that we have had before are broken apart. Those larger houses divided against themselves. But this place, Christ Church, and churches like it all over the country have a vision to be something different for people in this world. A place where people come together and bump into each other and look each other in the eyes and speak to one another. And we have to take that opportunity to ask one another how we are and to share with one another how we are. We have to take that opportunity to be together. Even if you only come to Christ Church and have a group of friends and all you like to do is just complain about the rector's sermons, that is fine. It's really okay. Because you're having an interaction with someone else. Now, just having interactions with someone else isn't going to cure depression. Sometimes it won't change it at all. I have interactions all the time with people. I've been around lots of people. I'm a huge extrovert. Have been, maybe you've noticed. Have been for a long, long time in my life. That did not stop me from suffering from depression and anxiety. No more that I can think my way out of an infection that needed an antibiotic, I would never be able to think my way out of being depressed, going to people who are professionals. It is in that way that God has healed me. A place that I have come that my house no longer feels divided inside of myself. And so I say this to all of you this morning as an invitation to not be silent. All of you know people who suffer from mental illness, from depression. Many times it's masked by alcohol, by drug use. That's why I also go to an Al-Anon meeting. We have to pay attention to how our houses are put together, and then we have to come together in larger houses so that we can care for one another. This is who we are as Christian people. This is our calling. This is what the Holy Spirit has been inviting us to all along. Wherever 2 or 3 are gathered, the Holy Spirit is there with us, giving us the opportunity to love one another, to share the love of God with someone else, and to accept the love of Jesus Christ for us. To accept it, for our own house not to be divided, so that we might come together and build larger, more houses for those who are hurting, those who are in need. There will be no shortage of stories about people dying before their time. Those stories will continue. The way we interact as Christians in the world with those stories is to be brave. Get help. Help other people get help. And then live that full life that Jesus Christ is calling each and every one of us to in the love of God. Amen.
Amen.